Agredam Namama Agredam Namama Om Bhuva Swaha Vaivedam Namama Vaivedam Namama Om Bhuva Swaha Om Swaha Suryayedam Namama Suryayedam Namama Om Bhurva Swaha Prajapatayam Namama Prajapatayam Namama Om Bhurva Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayam Om Bhurva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayam Om Bhurva Swaha Tatsaviturvarenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Namo Om
You are my father, my mother, my helper and friend, my guru. You are the only one. Especially to those people who are lost with no support, no protection. To them, you are the only savior. You are in every way the giver of physical, mental, and spiritual happiness. Suffering, vices, mistakes, you destroy. You, Mother Nature, nourish and protect the whole universe. Compassion is your real nature. O great soul, you are the glory of nature, and the method of operation of nature. Only a few people in all creation feel this. O ocean of love, you are the residence of welfare, security, and peace. You are the lamp of the temple of the mind. O God, I tell you, it is I who forgets you all the time. But you have not forgotten me. There is no end to the grace and blessings from you. Moment to moment, you release and expand heaven. You are the life of this life, the pulsation of this pulsation, of this breathing. You are the beloved. Almighty God, finding a master guru like you, present everywhere, everything in you and you in all nature. Tell me, please, leaving you, where should I go?
Page Arabic, page 1. The second time I was trying this. Second time.
By regarding, by my learning, so many good things are you. How many who really kill you. By
Nobody
learning,
should be,
so many
nobody
could be untrue.
should be confused.
Because my learning independent.
My recording is
Independent.
There are 3 recordings going on after the...
By learning, you pretty good.
Can be circulated instantly. Your recording.
I cannot say.
Instant mission.
Guruji, the only thing to be careful of is recording.
Mundaka Upanishad
Mundaka Upanishad, Peace Invocation. Om. O divine forces, divine gods, may we hear with our ears what is auspicious. May we, who are ready to worship, see with our eyes what is auspicious. May we who sing your praise live the span of life allotted to us by the Lord in perfect health and strength. May Indra, the Supreme Lord who is shining in all directions, Pushan, the all-seeing one, Taraksha, who protects from all evil, and Brahaspati, who protects our spiritual luster, confer on us prosperity in our study of the Scriptures and the practice of the truths contained therein, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Om, peace, peace, peace. Brahma, the universal I Am, arose as the first among gods. The maker of the universe, the protector of the world. He taught the knowledge of Brahman, the absolute I Am, the foundation of all knowledges, to Artavan, his eldest son. 2. That knowledge of Brahman, which Brahma taught to Atharvan. Atharvan in olden times told Angira. He, in his turn, taught it to Satyavaha, son of Bharadvaja, and the son of Bharadvaja to Angiras, both the higher and the lower knowledge. Shaunaka, that famous director of a university, once approached Angiras in the manner laid down by the scriptures and questioned, "Sir, what is that knowing which everything in the world becomes known?" To him he said, "Two kinds of knowledge are to be known, as indeed the knowers of Brahman declare, the higher as well as the lower." Of these, the lower consists of the study of Rigved, Yajurved, Samaved, Atharva Ved, phonetics, the code of rituals, grammar, etymology, metrics, and astronomy. Now the higher knowledge is that by which the imperishable is attained. Number 6, what is invisible, ungraspable, unoriginated, and attribute-less, what has neither eyes nor ears, nor hands, nor feet, what is eternal, all-pervading, immeasurably subtle, and limitless in manifestation. That imperishable being is what the wise perceive as the source of all creation.
Identity.
That is to say, the absolute I am. Number 7, as a spider sends forth and withdraws its web, as herbs grow on the earth, as the hair grows on the head and the body of a living person without any effort, so from the imperishable arises here the universe. Number 8, by tapasya, Brahman expands. From that food is produced. From food, life, energy, thence mind, thence the real, the 5 elements, thence the worlds, the network of elements, and immortality among various karmas. Number 9, he who is all-knowing and all-wise, whose austerity consists of knowledge, from him are born the Brahma, Hiranyagarbha, name and form and food. Here ends the first section of the first chapter in Mundaka Upanishad.
The Mundaka Upanishad belongs to the Atharva Veda, and it has 3 chapters, or 3 mundakas. Each of them has 2 sections, or khandas. In total, there are 66 mantras, 64 in the Upanishad proper, and 2 in the Shanti Path. The name is derived from the root mund, which means to shave, as the person who comprehends the teaching of this Upanishad is shaved or liberated from error and ignorance, particularly that error of identification of the self with the body-mind complex. The words munda and mundaka mean to shave the head, Therefore, this Upanishad is meant for the sincere sannyasis and yogis, allegorically. That is to say, for all those who are ready to accept the absolute truth, as well as to renounce untruth from their lives. On the one hand, the Upanishad states and describes clearly the distinction between the higher knowledge, para vidya, of the Supreme Brahman, or the absolute I Am, and on the other hand, the lower knowledge, apara vidya, of the empirical world, or the individual I Am. Paravidya, or higher knowledge, is the absolute truth. Its content is the oneness between the absolute I Am and the individual I Am, or the absolute self and the individual self. It is primarily by this higher knowledge alone, and not merely by sacrifices or worship, that one can reach Brahman, or the absolute I Am. Only the sannyasin and the yogin, who follow the absolute truth and have given up everything untrue from their lives, can obtain the unity and the identity with the absolute I Am, or Brahman. Acknowledgement. It is with gratitude and a sense of obligation that Ananda Ashram acknowledges the untiring efforts of Eileen Vidya Lankara, who edited and prepared this text and executed the calligraphy of the Sanskrit mantras. During my lectures on this Upanishad in the past, Vidya Lankara carefully noted my comments and wrote word by word what was said, and as well copied accurately the transliterated English. Also, it is important to thank Bharati for accurate checking and cross-checking of the original Sanskrit text, and for her scrupulous faithfulness to both the spirit and the letter of this classic. Though there are many philosophical commentaries, this edition is for the sake of those students who also want to acquire a fundamental understanding of Sanskrit. Finally, we wish to thank George Balin and Kamala for typing the metaphysical summary.
Chapter 1, Section 1. In the first section of the Mundaka Upanishad, there are 9 mantras in addition to the introductory Shanti Pad, the peace invocation, which has 2 mantras. In these first 2 mantras, every sadhaka should invoke the heavenly blessings for holistic health, for world peace, as well as individual peace. O heavenly devas, grant us power so that we may use our senses and our bodies for the sake of heavenly service and for the sake of every living being throughout the world. As well, please grant us power to avoid the misuse of our bodies, senses, and minds so that we will be able to tolerate every type of stress and calamity, both individual and personal, global and universal as well. Now, mantra means that which protects the whole universe as well as the individual's senses and mind. And by the first 2 mantras, the author outlines spiritual genealogy, both allegorically and figuratively. And this means that every being is made of 2 principles. First, the eternal principle, which is the noumenon, or the unknown, or the changeless reality. And second, the principle of constant change or phenomenon, or in other words, all that is known by the senses and mind. That is to say, the whole universe which is perceived by our senses. Now, it's common sense that when a baby is born, we see the tiny body and the senses alone. We understand that the mind is still in seed form. And within a year, the baby begins to manifest the mind, and after 2 years, the baby begins to evolve a psychosomatic consciousness, or the psychological ego, by which the baby begins to manage its own life with a growing independence. Within 5 years, the child develops wisdom or intelligence by which it can discriminate between right and wrong. This is an example of how spiritual genealogy operates in a universal sense. In this genealogy and spiritual evolution, no being is an exception. One principle in us is changeless, while the other is always in constant flux. For example, every tree has two parts. The root is not perceived by our senses, yet is the main source of nourishment, growth, and maintenance, and serves as the foundation of the life of the tree. The other part of the tree we can see in the form of branches and leaves, the foliage which comes and goes with the seasons. And so in the same way, this is the tree of the entire universe, especially in the case of living beings, where one can see constant change, which revolves around that eternal principle. That is to say, everything is composed of these two principles, the noumenon, or the absolute I am, and phenomenon, as body and mind, which are always in flux. Now, the noumenon, or pure existence, is beyond all goals or motivations, while phenomenon is always characterized by goals. For example, if someone should ask you the question, why are you here, then this question can be answered by referring to the cause and effect of time and space. On the other hand, if someone should ask you, why do you exist, this cannot be answered. Pure existence is beyond time and space. Because the principle of I am is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, that is to say, beyond time and space, this question cannot be answered. And therefore, that absolute I am is beyond all goals and beyond all description, while our bodies, minds, and senses, which are time and space bound, are always goal-oriented. The whole noumenon and phenomenon constitute one unity of life. Now, without the noumenon, phenomenon cannot exist. And vice versa, without the phenomenon of the universe, the noumenon remains permanently unknown and unexpressed. He who knows the secret, the cycle between noumenon and phenomenon, becomes eternal and free from all sorrow and suffering for good. And he or she alone is truly capable of enjoying and delighting in both the phenomenon and the noumenon equally. The third mantra outlines the meeting between Saunaka, the director of a university, under whose leadership 88,000 students were learning, and Angiras, who was a world-renowned guru. And the following two questions serve as the focal points of the mantra and as well of the Upanishad. First, O enlightened one, what is that by knowing which all things of the universe, including past, present, and future, become known? Now, between noumenon and phenomenon, there exists an ascending and descending relationship. From noumenon, or the absolute I am, one moves into the universal I am, called Brahma, and then universal wisdom, or universal mind, universal ego, and then the individual I am as the ego, body, and mind. And moving from man to godhood, there comes first the body, senses, and mind, then the individual I am, and then one ascends to the universal I am. And finally, one attains the absolute I am.
Ascending,
Ascending
and descending.
and descending.
Ascending and ascending.
Second, If such a precious knowledge is indeed available, by what means does one arrive at such knowledge? Mantra number 4 illustrates the answers to both these profound questions. Now, with reference to the first question, Guru Angira says, quote, "It is pure consciousness or pure awareness in the form of I am, by knowing which one knows all things in the universe, past, present, and future." End of quote. In connection with question number 2, Guru Angira states that through spiritual disciplines such as meditation, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, one is able to experience pure being. And further, he outlines 2 forms or types of vidya, or knowledge. The first is the para vidya, or knowledge of the absolute I am. And the second is the apara vidya, or the knowledge of the relative, the sensory universe. Mantra number 5 describes the nature of para vidya, that supreme science of the absolute self, and apara vidya, the relative knowledge of the sensory universe. Now, by means of para vidya, the sadhaka, or the spiritual student, realizes his identity with absolute consciousness, or Brahman, which is operating in him or her, and in all things in the form of I am. By means of apara vidya, one gains knowledge of the relative and the manifest universe. And by that knowledge, one is able to get, so to speak, bread and butter. It is not eternal. By means of apara vidya, or the relative knowledge, we overcome death, disease, suffering. That is to say, death in the form of poverty. In short, one overcomes all forms of lack, all types of want, all manner of deficiency. And by means of paravidya, the seeker obtains knowledge of that absolute life. Now, obviously, a dead body cannot work, and vice versa, hunger and poverty and all want may kill a man or woman while still alive. And therefore, Guru Angiras describes 2 types of knowledge. The phenomenal, by which a person can gain money, career, vocation, and so forth. And that knowledge by which one experiences the absolute I am. Therefore, it's necessary that one must have both types of knowledge. In Mantra 6, Angiras describes the nature of the absolute I am, which is without dimension, beyond size and shape, colorless, not limited by body and senses, without human mind or individual ego, with universal energy. It is beyond everything. Although none of these aforementioned entities, such as body and mind, can operate without I am, by identity with the absolute I am, man becomes eternal and immortal. The 7th mantra offers 3 similes or analogies of the creation of this universe. As a spider sends forth and draws in its thread, as plants grow on the earth, and as hair grows on the head and body of a living man. So does everything in the universe arise from that power which is imperishable. The first simile indicates the relationship between noumenon and phenomenon, and the second simile indicates the seed theory, which states that when the time and when the conditions are right, the seeds or germs of creation grow and they sprout automatically, spontaneously from the earth and from the elements. So, in the same way, life after death and death after life moves in endless cycles until one achieves the identity with the absolute I am. That is the purpose of human birth. The third simile indicates that in living bodies, the hair and nails are inert. In the same way, the outer matter, which is apparently inert, is the manifestation of I am. Mantra 8 offers a theory which unifies the whole universe from noumenon to phenomenon and from phenomenon to noumenon, ascending and descending. From the absolute I am to prana, to sensory organs, body and individual.
Only white, me, only white, me,
This is the unified field.
all scientists are saying.
Which all scientists have been searching.
Therefore, this I am principle is the eternal noumenon and the unifying center of the whole universe. And last, Mantra 9 describes the nature of Brahman, that absolute I am, which is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent. The entire universe is manifested from it. And all name and all form originate from this I am, although the absolute I am remains entirely beyond all name and all form, beyond the sense-perceived universe. And also this mantra describes what is the highest form of tapas, or austerity, or spiritual discipline. The answer given by Guru Angiras is that the highest form of tapasya, or austerity, consists of knowledge about I am from within oneself through meditation, and not by outer knowledge.
Chapter 1, Section 2. In the second section of the first chapter of the Mundaka Upanishad, there are 13 mantras. From mantra 1 to mantra 6, various forms of yajna, especially Agnihotra, are described. From mantra 7 through 10, all yajnas, when done in an improper way, that is, with ulterior or selfish motives, are criticized. Mantra 11 describes the results of performing yajna in the proper way, for the cosmic purpose of world peace. And it also describes how the sadhaka reaches the state of absolute I am, Purusha Avyaya Atma, by means of the sun's rays as his vehicle. Mantra 12 describes the means and end of yajna. The means cannot be the end. Howsoever a road is beautiful, it cannot be home. Similarly, these yajnas are means to obtain the end, the absolute I am, which is the real home. Here we are advised to reach out beyond the outer Agnihotra to the inner Agnihotra, which is to say, the Agnihotra of yoga. The Agnihotra of the meditator is the inner awakening, the internal fire, the awareness of Brahma through dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. This may be found in Patanjali's Raja Yoga, Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. The still mind presents the opportunity for that which is the ultimate truth. The seer remains in his own form. He who understands the means as the end, he is a fool and an idiot, and he cannot get success by any yajna. Therefore the seeker should search for a wise guru who can guide him to abide in the state of absolute I am. Mantra 13 outlines the transmission of the energy of awareness, Brahma, or absolute I am, to the seeker whose mind is tranquil, whose senses are controlled, and who is ready. Otherwise, if the student is not ready, then even the absolute God cannot do anything. Therefore, when you are ready, Guru and God and the whole world will work with you. Our whole life is yajna. In English, yajna is described as sacrifice, but this is a very poor translation. Therefore, Guru says, I'm using here the Sanskrit word yajna. There is not any work or any action of life which may not be called yajna. Therefore we have two types of yajna. One, yajna with cosmic purpose, which is performed without any ulterior motive, and is called suyajna, or true yajna. And two, yajna which is performed with selfish or ulterior motive, which is called huyagya, or destructive yagya. Even in modern times, in the cause of national protection, armies and weapons are used to destroy other nations, and that is an example of kuyagya. Yagya cannot be done without mind, and according to the temperament of the mind, there are 4 yugas. 1. Satya Yuga, in which 100% truth prevails. 2. Treta Yuga, in which 75% truth and 25% untruth or worldly thoughts prevail. 3. Vapara Yuga, which is 50-50. 4. Kali Yuga, or the Yuga of lawlessness, confusion, and indecisiveness, in which prevail 25% untruth and worldly thoughts, and 25% truth.
How many by?
75% untruth and worldly thoughts, and 25% truth. The duty of the seeker is to bring the Kali Yuga mind to the level of Satya Yuga, to abide in the state of absolute I Am. As already told, there is circulation between noumenon and phenomenon, between the subjective and the objective, the unmanifest and the manifest, or the unknown and the known, while the absolute I Am is beyond everything. The objective form of consciousness is the fire element, or the element of light, and the subjective form of the fire element of light is consciousness, or awareness. The significance of Agnihotra is that the cow represents the senses, and here the cow dung is the body. When the fire of awareness, or pure consciousness, ignites, then all karmas are consumed in the fire of awareness, of Brahman. Thus, the individual I Am becomes free of all karmas for good. And this individual I Am is transformed into the universal I Am. Whatever is going on in the whole universe, the same thing is going on within our minds. And vice versa, whatever is going on in our minds, the same thing is going on in the whole universe. So therefore, mind is the universe. When the fire is flaming properly, then you should do Agnihotra. These flames are described by Mantra 4 as having 7 forms, or 7 flames, corresponding to the 7 chakras: Bhu, Bhuva, Sva, Maha, Jana, Tapaha, Satyam. In the same way, when body and mind are not empty or hungry, you cannot eat or think. Otherwise, by forcing eating or thinking, you can damage your body or mind. It's a common experience that when you are not hungry and force yourself to eat, you can develop constipation, diarrhea, or various diseases. And when your mind is not ready to think, by forcing yourself to think, you can damage your mind and brain by various ways, or you can fall into sleep. What is the main purpose of these yajnas, or of any work or action? They are a means, not an end. The purpose of all yajna is to know one's self. What is the purpose of worshipping God? The purpose is to know oneself. And he or she who knows this fact comes out of the body and mind. The principle of I Am is always beyond the body and mind. But due to identification with the body and mind, there are the three types of I am. Individual I am, universal I am, and the absolute I am. And this truth you will know by performing Agnihotra regularly and by means of meditation. First, the individual I am, by grace of God and Guru, becomes the universal I am. And then finally, and ultimately, the universal I am is transformed into the absolute I am. This is the essence of the metaphysical summary of this section.
One.
Second and third chapter. In the second and third chapter, there are also two sections in each. In the second chapter, there are 10 mantras in the first section and 11 mantras in the second. The third chapter has 10 mantras in the first section and 11 in the second. Thus, the total number of mantras herein consists of 42. The topic is that of noumenon and phenomenon, or in other words, the unknown and the known, the unmanifest and the manifest. The second and third chapter deal with the main dialogue between the Guru and the Shishya, that is, Angiras and Shaunaka. In order to facilitate the subject matter of noumenon and phenomenon, we are required to deal again with the same theme. That is to say, Shaunaka asks Guru Angiras, what is that by knowing which everything becomes known? And second, how does one realize it? Guru Angiras answers that it is pure awareness, or Akshara Brahma, which is manifested in the form of absolute I am, and which is omnipresent, omnipotent, and omniscient, and moreover which is the center of all living beings. This noumenon extends through all planes of time, past, present, and future. And to realize that, one has to enter through the main door. That is to say, I am, without any language and without the use of mind, by means of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. You may have a room or apartment or a house or a mansion or a palace. But one thing is common to all. You cannot get in without a doorway. The door is analogous to the neck in the human body. The movement of coming and going cannot take place unless a door is there, as in the case of the neck for the body and the brain. There are two types of nerves, afferent and efferent. Afferent nerves carry impulses from all over the body to the brain through the neck, whereas efferent nerves travel from the brain through the neck all over the body, carrying impulses in the other direction. Likewise, this I am exists as an eternal bridge between the noumenon and phenomenon. Noumenon and phenomenon. What is the nature of noumenon? What is the nature of phenomenon? And what is their relationship? The noumenon is always unknown. And the moment the noumenon becomes known, it assumes the form of phenomenon. Their relation is the same as that of the seed and the tree. Of course, the seed is noumenon, while the tree is the phenomenon, the allegoric point of noumenon. Ultimately, they are the same. There is circulation and reciprocity between noumenon and phenomenon. For example, out of the seed, in this case noumenon, comes the tree, which is phenomenon. And ultimately there is fruit which again contains the seed. The egg can also be seen as the figurative symbol of the noumenon, and the chicken as the figurative symbol of phenomenon. Out of the egg comes the chicken, and again out of the chicken comes the egg. The same holds true for the human seed. Out of the ovum come body and mind, and out of the body and mind appears again the human seed. In the same way, noumenon gives rise to phenomenon, and phenomenon to noumenon. Again, the spider sends out threads and draws them back again. In the same manner, out of noumenon proceeds phenomenon, which then reverses and is absorbed back into noumenon. By the birth of the body, the soul is not born, nor by the death of the body does the soul die. As long as the soul is not able to work freely beyond the body and mind, for so long its universal nature is obscured. It is victimized by life and death. In the winter, all crops and seeds are dead and dormant. But with the coming of spring, these crops and seeds are revived. Thus again and over again, the principle of I am is identified with body and mind, and feels identity with the phenomenon of life and death. Until, by means of the absolute I am, or Brahma, through dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, it realizes oneness and unity with Godhood. This simile is illustrated well by means of the seed and the tree. For in the winter seeds are dormant and remain part of the earth, yet in the spring they germinate once more and come to life. How does matter, which is inert, originate from pure awareness? As hair and nails, which are inert, originate from a living body, in the same way the whole of matter springs from pure awareness, or Brahman. What is the relationship between awareness of Brahman and the individual soul? As from a burning fire sparks are emitted, in the same way individual beings appear from that Supreme Soul. Although the noumenon and phenomenon are exchangeable, like the tree and the seed, the tree is nourished by its root, not by the seed or the branches or flowers. In the same way, with body and mind on one side and the I am on the other, the I am is the root. To clarify this, here is a story. When Mao Zedong was a young boy, his mother became ill for some months. He was very anxious to please her, to help her get well. She suggested that he could best help her by watering the garden outside. So Mao eagerly worked in the garden, watering the flowers and the leaves. But he was not aware that the roots needed watering too. When his mother got well, she went outside to look at the garden. But much was her dismay to see it all withered and dry. She asked Mao why he had not fulfilled his promise, but he cried that he had watered the pretty flowers and leaves daily. And she realized that he had not known to water the roots. Noumenon has no size and no shape, nor does it have color. It is beyond prana, beyond mind, senses, and body. It is without limbs. But from it originates prana, mind, and all the sensory organs. Akasha, air, fire, water, and earth, which uphold all. From that noumenon, the entire cosmos of phenomenon arises. Whether it is according to holy books or the texts of science, this noumenon is the absolute I am. Therefore, the absolute I am, or awareness of Brahman, is the original unified field theory. Whether there is a birth of the cosmos according to modern science or theological books such as the Bible or the Vedas, there is one question which remains unsolved. This question is, who has seen the birth of the cosmos? Darkness is not able to perceive anything. Only the principle of awareness is the witness, that awareness of Brahma. How does one realize that absolute I am? For the answer, we consult mantras 3 and 4. Take the Upanishad as the bow, the great weapon, and place upon it the arrow, sharpened by meditation. Then, having drawn it back with the mind directed to the thought of Brahman, stake that mark, O my good friend, that which is imperishable. Om is the bow, the Atman is the arrow, Brahman is said to be the mark. It is to be struck by an undistracted mind. Then the Atman becomes one with Brahma, as the arrow with the target. What is the nature of Brahman? For this we refer to verses 1 and 2. That luminous Brahman dwells in the cave of the heart and is known to move there. It is the great support for all, for in it is centered everything that moves, breathes, and blinks. O disciple, know that to be yourself, that which is both gross and subtle, which is adorable, supreme and beyond the understanding of creatures. That which is radiant, subtler than the subtle, that by which all the worlds and their inhabitants are supported, That verily is the indestructible Brahman. That is the prana, speech and mind. That is the true, and that is the immortal. That alone is to be struck. Strike it, my good friend. Brahman is of two kinds, Nirguna and Saguna. The Nirguna is beyond Maya, while the Saguna is with Maya. Shloka 5 says, "In him are woven heaven, earth, and the space between, and the mind with all the sense organs. Know that non-dual Atman alone, and give up all other talk. It is the bridge to immortality." Mantra 10 states, "The sun does not shine there, nor the moon and the stars, nor this lightning, not to speak of this fire. When it shines, everything shines after it. By its light, everything is lit." And Mantra 11 reads, "That immortal Brahman alone is in front. That Brahman is behind. That Brahman is to the right and left. Brahman alone pervades everything above and below. This universe is that supreme Brahman alone." Through ignorance, one sees in the place of Brahman the universe of names and forms outside oneself, and in place of Atma, or pure consciousness, the individual body and mind. This false vision creates the illusion of such pairs of opposites as good and evil, life and death, freedom and bondage, light and darkness. It is the cause of man's grief and suffering. These diverse names and forms are ignorance. For what one sees is really pure Brahman or Atman, which are identical. Thus a man is nothing but pure consciousness, eternally free, illumined and blessed. Even when under the spell of ignorance, he regards himself as a bound creature. When the truth is known, the illusion of duality disappears, and the universe known as non-Brahman to the ignorant reveals itself as the effulgent Brahman. A river has four forms: that of the glacier, the mountain stream or rivulet, the great rushing river like Ganga proper, and finally the ocean where it merges. In the same way, every living being has four stages: the deep sleep, which is akin to the glacier; the form of the dream activity, which is akin to the mountain stream; the waking state, which is akin to the mighty stream of the river Ganga; and the last form, which is its emergence with the ocean, in the ocean, akin to the melting of the soul into that ocean of life, or Brahman. We cannot live without doing some karma, and yet it is the karma which binds a man. In the second section, chapter 2, mantra 1 states, "Two birds, united always and known by the same name, closely cling to the same tree. One of them eats the sweet fruit, since he is identified with body and mind, and thus must undergo all types of karma. The other looks on without eating, and is the witness free of all karma. How to detach oneself from body and mind? Mantra 2 indicates, seated on the same tree, the jiva is bewildered by his impotence. But when he beholds the other, the Lord worshipped by all, and his glory, he then becomes free from grief. The sorrow, suffering, and misery of life cannot be overcome by any means without meditation on the absolute I Am, Brahman. Mantra 3 reads, when the seer beholds the self-luminous Creator, the Lord, the Purusha, the source and fountainhead of Brahman, then he, the wise seer, shakes off good and evil, becomes stainless, and reaches the supreme unity. What is the fruit of self-knowledge? In Shloka 8 is written, the fetters of the heart are broken, all doubts are resolved, and all works cease to bear fruit, when he is upheld, who is both high and low. The knowledge of Atma destroys the effect of the karma performed by a man in his previous lives prior to attaining knowledge. An illumined soul, on account of his detachment from the body and mind, is not affected by any kind of karma. This was the brief summary of the second and third chapters of the Mundaka Upanishad. The beauty of this Upanishad is that it describes the journey from God to man and vice versa, from man to God.
Tvameva vidya dravinam